Adam, I was listening to you on with our friend Lawrence Holmes as I was getting ready for this podcast, and you talked about your early violin career, some acting you did early on. Yeah. So what eventually got you into sports broadcasting as something that you want to do in life?
I think we have a tendency to latch onto or follow the lead of people that we like or respect, no matter what the age is. So when I was 14 or 15, I was a freshman in high school. I met a senior at my high school from my hometown. His mom was my preschool teacher. His name's Ken LaVicka. He's still broadcasting to this day. He's the voice of Florida Atlantic University down in West Palm Beach, Boca Raton. And he played volleyball. He was an actor, he was in theater, he was in choir, he was the funniest guy, he hosted all the shows, you know, all the events at school, like homecoming and like sketches and things like that, and was a person that was very like you gravitated to. He was a good guy, and he kind of took me under his wing, and I kind of wanted to follow his lead, and one of the things that he did was broadcast games. He broadcast the football games, some of the basketball games, and then he played volleyball, so those games would be on public access in Addison, Illinois. So when I had the chance as a sophomore, he had graduated, and I was like, well, nobody else is doing this. I have like a little extra time after, you know, this event or this rehearsal or whatever it is. So I would mess around with broadcasting volleyball and football and basketball. My senior year, I did a little bit more of it in between my part-time job and in between school and rehearsals and all that stuff. And it was always something. It was just something that was there. Was I taking it very seriously? No. It was more of an excuse to just talk about my friends who, hey, Nick is my friend. He's the fullback and he plays violin, you know, behind me in orchestra. Or, you know, Joe's the quarterback. I've known him since he was 7 years old. So I wanted to talk about like my buddies, and it was an easy excuse for it. So it was just something fun to do. And then I remember having lunch with Ken during the summer before senior year, and he said, hey, I don't know if you're thinking about it, but if you ever want to try broadcasting, I go to Valparaiso, or he goes to Valparaiso. He goes, I'm going to be the general manager at the student radio station next year. If you go there, I'll just put you on the air. And I'm like, all right, cool. That's just something to note in the back of your head. I'm like, all right, that's an option. I didn't know what I wanted to do in college. I applied to Bradley. I applied to Western Illinois. I applied but did not get into Syracuse. Like, I had no SAT score. I had a good ACT. You know, that's a very Midwestern thing, I think, for a lot of people of our age. And I remember Ken said Valpo, so I applied to Valpo, got in, and that's what kind of triggered me into going into broadcasting a little bit more seriously.
So we're going to skip ahead after Valpo, but I should note, we'll break down the fourth wall here. You were always destined to be on this podcast because late aughts, you and I overlapped briefly in the Northern League. You were the second Northern League alum to be on the podcast. You were with the Gary Railcats.
Gary Railcats, yep.
When I was with Joe Davis and Schaumburg Flyers.
Yep.
And you also were at Valpo with the producer of this podcast, Mark Scheck.
The savior of this podcast, some might say.
We did have some technical difficulties getting going. Mark saved the day. So I got to meet you briefly then, and then you go to Spirit Lake, Iowa.
Yep.
First of all, where in Iowa is Spirit Lake, Iowa?
It's in the northwest portion of Iowa. It's about 15 to 20 minutes south of the Minnesota state line and about 70 miles east of Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
Okay, so you were the sports director at KUOO.
Yep.
How did you get there?
So after this, I did a second season in Gary after senior year, and I made. It was a $500 a month, basically, internship. I was the number 2 broadcaster, but I worked 9 to 5 during the day. It's what you did in Schaumburg, right? Like you, me, and Joe did a lot of the same things work-wise in that 2009 summer, where we work in the office. We're either helping with tickets, or we're helping with PR, or we're helping with photography, or the game notes, or whatever it might be. We're basically doing like a real job for intern money, or in some cases, no money.
Right.
And then at 5 o'clock, we grab our scorebooks and we do the lineup cards, and we actually get to do the fun part, which was the game. So once that was over, I had to go, like a lot of us go, like, I got to go find a real job now, or I got to make money, even if it's not a real full-time job. I applied to a lot of different spots. I only found this one job that was willing to interview me about 500 miles away from suburban Chicago, and they had just lost they were on the verge of losing their 25-year veteran sportscaster to cancer, and it was a very strange position for everybody to be in. Like, this was far away from home, maybe not what I was expecting or hoping for a first job. They certainly weren't expecting to ever hire this position, because Joey Elbert, the late great Joey Elbert, the person I replaced, was a really good man and really good at his job. And he was embedded in that place for a quarter century. And it was a very odd circumstance to step into, but they needed somebody. I needed a job. It was kind of, fall of '09, around the time of a recession. Jobs for broadcasting and writing were a little bit more scarce. Eventually it would balloon up again, but like at that time it was pretty scarce. So that was the job that I had. That was the one opportunity I had, and I took it.
So what's the day-to-day? What are some of your responsibilities when you are a 22-year-old sports director at a station 500 miles from home?
4:30 a.m. wake-up calls, and man, I am still to this day not a morning person. Unless the only time I force myself up is when I have to fly to get to a game or whatever. I hated that job, and ruined my stomach lining because I had never been a coffee drinker, and then I was banging down like 6 cups a day in the morning and just ruining my stomach. And I was at the station at 5. I would do compile the morning sportscast, compile audio, write out the stories that I was going to do at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and noon, and 5, and then we'd have to do another one at 5. I was the co-host of the Pop Culture Morning Show, which had its some fun moments. You interviewed Nick Offerman and Donald Glover, and Allison Brie said that she would be my Valentine once. By the way, I'm just naming people on NBC shows because we had a relationship with NBC, and they would allow their, at the time, like B and C list people to come on the show. And then at noon, do the noon sportscast. Then I would prep for my game. Typically, we would have a boys basketball and a girls basketball game. I did one playoff football game there. We'd have wrestling duels between local high schools. I was scheduling out the rest of the stations. It was 3 stations in the area, and I was assigning all the broadcasts. I was prepping for my own. I'd do the 5 o'clock sportscast, hop in the car, drive anywhere from 30 to 90 minutes to get to a high school that we would cover, do the 2 games, drive back, stop at McKean's Irish Pub, get the $7 dinner that they still had going on at 11 o'clock at night. I'd be the only person at the bar, just eating dinner and having a 7 and 7. And then I'd go home, wake up at 4:30, and do it again the next day.
Wow. When you're going through this, and you know the goal, and you've done enough research at this point that this is not abnormal necessarily to start here. Do you have moments where you're like, do I really want to keep going through, because do I want to just leave this industry? Do I want to try something else? I mean, did you have roadblocks or obstacles or nights where you're just like, I don't know if I can keep, if this is what it takes, I don't know if I can keep doing this?
Yeah, I had a couple of rough nights. Part of it was, I'm 22, 23 years old. I'm isolated. I'm from Chicago originally, even if it's the suburbs. The town I'm living in now is 1/10 of the size of the town that I grew up in. It's 100th the size, or 1,000th the size of the city that I'm from. So it's just like a very odd, culture shock. I'm not the only minority, but I'm one of maybe 5 minorities that live in this city, in this town, in this little village. And because of this weird schedule, I didn't take very good care of myself. I gained a lot of weight at the time. I was smoking. I had a bad smoking habit. I smoked Newport menthols. I never got to a pack a day, but I got, at its worst, probably about a half a pack a day. Part of it was all the driving. I was just in the car trying to stay awake sometimes, and smoking was an easy way for me to stay awake. I would have 1 or 2 on the way home just to stay awake, and that became a bad habit. I drank probably way too much, and again, I'm a kid that comes from a background and a religion where you don't drink, so at 22, 23, I have a little bit of my own agency, and I'm annoyed or isolated, or maybe probably, I never was diagnosed, but I was probably depressed in some capacity, and I drank a lot, and that was just the easiest way to cope. I'd come home after the couple of the 7 and 7 and a dinner and a Newport, and come home and have a beer to help me fall asleep, and I woke up I woke up on the floor a couple of nights. I woke up in my doorway one night during the winter. I feel like I almost caught hypothermia the next day when I woke up in the kind of doorway. I was living in somebody's basement apartment for $400 a month. I didn't have a heater, or I didn't have heat, so I had to go buy 2 space heaters. It was just like little things. None of this is insurmountable, obviously. It clearly was something that you can overcome if you focus and do the right things. But it felt like it was, this is not what I signed up for, or this is not how it should be. If the job is important, I shouldn't be handling it this way. And I handled it very poorly. But it was also a wake-up call to think, all right, well, if I'm not happy doing this, or if I'm not happy here, and it had very little to do with the people. I still am friends with people to this day. I FaceTimed with my old boss, the host of that morning show, 2 weeks ago, because I know his daughter's 19 years old now, and he and his wife have been wonderful to me over the last 15 years. But it was just the circumstance, and I didn't know if I wanted to do it anymore. And then I started looking at baseball jobs, and I knew baseball was kind of the way I could get back into doing the thing that I really wanted to do, which is the thing that made me happy when I was doing this job. It wasn't the sportscast, it wasn't doing the morning show, it wasn't doing the Saturday coaches show, it wasn't the free breakfast that you get. That perk didn't really do it for me. I've never been a morning or breakfast guy. It was the games. The games were the fun part. So I wanted to figure out, how do I shift into being the game guy, and going back to baseball was the answer.
So that's going to send us to the East Coast. It's going to send us to Somerset. Yeah. And I'll read a story here. Let's see. I don't have the exact date on this, but this would have been, early 2011 when you got that job?
2010. Yep.
2010. Okay. So the Somerset Patriots have hired Adam Amin as their new radio broadcaster. And what was interesting, and then you have a long statement in here.
Was that Ryan Dunleavy's story, the now New York Giants beat writer for the New York Post? Yes.
That's right. He wrote a couple Adam Amin pieces from Somerset. To become part of the Somerset Patriots, the class franchise of one of the most respected baseball leagues in the country, is a true privilege. Amin said, what struck me about this article is they allowed their fans to be part of the process.
Yes.
So in an effort to involve their fans in the process, the Patriots posted profiles and audio clips of each finalist to ask fans for their opinions and vote for their choice. And you know how competitive this is. And in this time of year, I remember, this is right around when I graduated college, so I was kind of looking around and thinking, and I had a lot of friends who were looking at this. This is hyper competitive. And you're now relying on some just Somerset Patriots fans. Walk me through that process of applying, interviewing, and being able to land that kind of first play-by-play job.
All right, I think the 15-year statute of limitations has passed, because it was 15 years ago I got that job. So I was one of those finalists, as you mentioned, and it was a great job, and it was a highly sought after. It was a number 1 job in the Atlantic League, which, at the time especially, it was a launch pad league for guys who got cut from AA or AAA, wanted to work their way back into affiliated baseball, or like ex-big leaguers that just wanted to play a little bit, like Ron Vallone and the late, Ryan Friel were guys that played, Brian Anderson, who was a pitcher for the Mariners. These are guys that eventually got signed and went back to Major League Baseball, or were just on their last legs, wanted to play a little bit, have a couple beers after the game, and then hang out during the day. So it was a really great league. 140 games, you're the number 1 person, it's a well-respected organization. All that stuff I said was true, but the process was a little scary, because they said, well, it's going to be up to the fans. We're going to post these clips. You vote on who you like the most. And I'm like, oh boy. So this is I'm posting on Facebook, hoping that my friends will vote. Then I realized, I was like, you can kind of stuff the ballot box if you clear your cookies, which is a very common thing that people do now. It was IP fraud, basically. It was ballot box stuffing. Everybody was doing it. All the finalists, I'm sure, were doing it. I figured out how to do it, and then I stopped, because I'm like, I can't sit here and vote for myself 7,000 times. It's a waste of time. So I think I talked to the PR person that was doing some of the hiring. I said, listen, Mark, I'm just asking. I'm not questioning. You guys can do whatever you want to. I'm just wondering, is this something that is taking place? And go, we already figured it out. This is going to kind of go by the wayside. We're not gonna talk about this ever again. We'll mention, fan vote, and then we're never gonna speak of it after that. He was nice enough to say, and again, Mark is still a great friend of mine to this day. We just had lunch in New York a couple of weeks ago, and he said, "You were our first choice. We wanted you for this job. You're going to get this job." And I remember being in the studio in Iowa, having this conversation with Mark, and just my shoulders dropping for the first time in like 2.5 months. We're just like, oh my God, a break. Like what feels like a break that I was looking for. And the job in Iowa was a break. And maybe I didn't appreciate it enough, and I'm better at it now, realizing how important it was. But that was the moment where I was like, oh my God, that's a baseball job. That's my lifeline back to being a play-by-play announcer. That's the thing I want to do. It's the thing I'm best at. It's the thing I love. It's the sport that I grew up on. I get to be a lead announcer for the first time. I'm good.
So you're in Somerset. Again, it's your first full time. It's a new city. It's a new team. What is kind of the day-to-day? Because the day-to-day when you're the Somerset Patriots is probably a little different than if you're the day-to-day of Chicago Bulls, for example.
Sure. The first thing I told Mark, the PR guy, was I can do the game notes. I'll do the game notes. I will take that off of your plate. It was my way of prepping. It's like, I'm just going to do all the game notes. I'm going to do them differently. I'm going to do them the way we did them in Gary, where we prep the other team a little bit, and it's going to be super easy I'm basically it's self-serving. I'm doing it for myself. But Mark said, that's great. I don't have to worry about it. You distribute them. That was the thing that I worked on from the time I woke up, I went from waking up at 4:30 in the morning to get to waking up at like 10:30, 11 o'clock, easing my way into a gym. Now, I lived in a hotel for $32 a night. So whatever money I made off of doing the games, a big chunk of that was going right to the hotel. It was a nice hotel. It was the Crown Plaza off of 287 in Bridgewater, New Jersey, and that's where the opposing team would stay. So I got the discount rate, but I would have to check out of the hotel every time we would go on a road trip because I didn't want to pay for nights that I wasn't living there or staying there. So I would pack up this big suitcase, stay in the hotel. When it was time to leave the next day, pack up a duffel bag out of that suitcase, put the suitcase in the car, put the duffel bag in the car, drive to the stadium, leave the suitcase in the clubhouse, grab my duffel bag, get on the bus, and we go off. That was kind of the road trip aspect of it. But day to day, I'm doing game notes at noon, done by like 1 o'clock, 1:30 once you get into a rhythm of it, get some lunch, get a workout in, go to the ballpark at like 3:30, 4 o'clock for a 7 o'clock game, interview the manager, stand around at the batting cages. I've already done all the prep. So I'm just filling out the scorebook at 6 o'clock, grabbing a Chipotle burrito, and then calling the game at 6:55 until 10. Maybe do the game notes that night if it's a little easier, and then I get to sleep in a little longer the next day. And it just became a routine that I almost still kind of subscribe to this day in some form or fashion.
During your time there, did you have your welcome to the big leagues moment? And that could be a lot of different things. We've had people who say it was a great moment, who get people who say it's getting in trouble or whatever it might be. But this is your first play-by-play gig. This is the beginning. Did you have that moment?
The night of April 22nd, 2010 in Bridgeport, Connecticut. It was the first game I called. Sparky Lyle was the manager and was a Cy Young Award winner for the New York Yankees in the late 70s, was part of the famous Bronx Zoo where all these crazy things are happening within the organization, within the clubhouse, on and off the field between all these like big-time Hall of Fame caliber New York Yankees. He's got stories for days. He was a notorious prankster in his time in Major League Baseball, and he's been the manager for this organization since its inception. So once a month, Sparky would say it's open bar. Bring your wives, bring your girlfriends, bring your wife and girlfriend, which was his kind of style. That's something that Sparky would probably say. And I'm taking care of the bar tab, no questions asked. And he would do that once a month. It was a great way for the guys to feel some camaraderie. And he would invite me, he would invite Ryan, the beat writer, Mark. We would all be invited to these things, which was just a very nice thing to do. It's my first night of lead broadcasting, and Sparky stands up in front of everybody at one point and says, actually, I should probably preface this first. I'm already a few pops in, and Sparky invites me to go outside with him and smoke. He was a Winston guy. So we're outside smoking Winstons, which are really rough on your throat. And again, I don't advise smoking cigarettes at all. I'm thankful that I quit a long time ago. But I get to smoke a cigarette with Sparky Lyle. So we're talking, and he's kind of getting to know me a little bit. This is really, really cool. And this is like, what a cool moment. You're getting to hang out with a Hall of Famer, Cy Young Award winner, great stories. And there's a few of us out there, and he's holding court as he often would. And he went back inside, and I looked at Casey Cahill, who was a veteran reliever on the team, and I said, that was one of the coolest moments of my entire life. And Casey had this big smile on his face. He's a New Jersey guy, grew up a Yankee fan, so he appreciates the moment that I'm having. A few minutes go by, we both go back inside, and I mentioned that Sparky's a notorious prankster. There's a fresh drink waiting for me at my seat. Sparky stands up and says, there's a lot of you here. He had this big, gruff, old gravelly voice. He goes, there's a lot of you here that are making your debuts. For us, it's a big deal. Never let, take this from me. It's like this really nice, sentimental speech. And he goes, our broadcaster's brand new. It's his first night. Welcome to your first show, kid. And he raises his glass. I'm like, the whole room is raising their glass. This is the greatest moment of my entire life. There's ex-big leaguers toasting me right now. I take a few swigs out of the drink. A few minutes go by. Sparky stands up again and he starts reaching into his mouth and goes, hey, has anybody seen my teeth? He had dentures, and his dentures were not in his mouth at that point. And he starts walking around the bar, and he comes to my seat, reaches into my drink, pulls out the dentures, and say, don't worry, I found them. And the whole room erupts. And that was my welcome to baseball, welcome to the show type of moment.
Wow. You drank a drink with Sparky Lyle's teeth.
Sparky Lyle's teeth were right in the middle of that. That's a fun memory. And what was nice about that is the guys afterwards said, that was your initiation because you have to get pranked by Sparky to be a part of this. And that was really cool.
That's wild. And you were here to tell the story. You made it.
We made it 15 years later. We're still here.
All right, Ryan Dunleavy, will bring him back in. Headline, Amin to work for ESPN.
Yep.
And the lead is simple. Adam Amin has taken his voice national. A 24-year-old play-by-play broadcaster for the Somerset Patriots officially was hired earlier this week by ESPN. He is slated to announce at least 45 collegiate sporting events over the next year, including college football and college basketball. He says it's been a really emotional few weeks. What was that process like? And I've heard, I'm honored I've gotten to know you over the years, and I've heard your podcast over the years, so I know how important these things are. But what I love about you, Adam, is you have great perspective, and I'm sure you knew a 24-year-old doesn't always get hired to do 45 collegiate sport events at ESPN. Yeah. So what kind of got you from Somerset to that job?
In the in-between times, of the season, leaving the Iowa job, which was going to be a full-time job with health benefits and salary and things like that, to go to a seasonal job where it's hey, the job's great. I loved it. I was so happy. I was so much happier there. But you have to piecemeal everything else together in the fall. So I had started to do more freelance work. I had gone back to people that I had worked with in college that were now producing games. And I said, if you need announcers for your ancillary stuff, I would love to be a part of it. I can do a lot of different things. So I was doing collegiate tennis tournaments and the Division II softball tournament and the Division II tennis championships and the Division II Elite Eight and doing these little side gigs. Joe Davis got me my first television job that year. He got asked by the IHSA to do the Illinois Volleyball Championship, something he had no experience with. I played volleyball, so he said, why don't we do the 4 championships? You do play-by-play for 2, I'll do play-by-play for 2, and we'll do color for each other. And I was like, that's a great idea. Thank you so much for doing that for me. And then he goes, now tell me about volleyball, because he didn't know anything about it. So, we did our first TV job together, and I was piecemealing like he was, piecemealing all these things together. While I was in New Jersey, I had met Ian Eagle from CBS and the Brooklyn Nets, and obviously one of the most respected announcers to this day that we have in the business. And he kind of took me under his wing. He gave me opportunities to shadow him. He gave me opportunities to go record NBA demos in Milwaukee and listen to my tapes and things like that. I think he got a sense for what I was doing and improving and hopefully getting better. And he had mentioned my name to his representation, his agent. And I at one point been told by Ian, you should call them. At some point, call him. And I'm like, I don't have any reason to in my head. I'm like, there's no reason to call this person. But I did it because he advised me to, and I trusted every word that came out of his mouth, and it was the best decision possible. So I called this agent. He said, I won't shut up about you. Send me a tape. So I piecemeal this resume tape together. I sent it to him. He goes, I see what he's talking about. Let's be in touch. And over the next few months, going into 2011, the spring of 2011, he saw the improvements. He saw that I was doing all this freelance work. I kept updating my resume, and he goes, just keep sending me everything you have and trust me on this. We had met for the first time in person in Indianapolis, again, 14 years ago at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. At the time I think it was like Conseco or something. Mm-hmm. And he said, I want to represent you. I think you have a legitimate future in this business, and I believe that you'll have a career. So I said, well, nobody else knows who I am and nobody else cares. Yeah, and you represent the person that I look up to as much as anybody. Let's do it. And over the course of going back to New Jersey and signing a contract with him and kind of updating resume tapes and doing some more freelance work while doing baseball, he would call me periodically and say, hey, I think we're going to have some work for you in the fall. Awesome. And the conversation started at, hey, there's 5 events for ESPN out there. And I'm like, take it. And he goes, hold on. There's 15 events out there for ESPN. Yeah, sign it, whatever it is. Hold on. I think this is the part that I only now understand years later. The only reason I got the shot that I did to be a full-time announcer for them was because Todd Harris left. Todd Harris, who is a very, very good football reporter, racing reporter, versatile announcer, does a million different things, has done Olympics, football, whatever. He's just a versatile announcer. He had left ESPN to go to NBC. And it was late in the game, kind of getting into midsummer, where now you need announcers to fill out all your inventory. And ESPN has always had a lot of inventory, and they needed somebody to fill that gap. But they also didn't want to hire somebody just for football. So they said, well, what else can you do? Well, I do softball, and I've covered wrestling, and I've covered volleyball, and I used to play, and I can do baseball, and I can do basketball, and I can do volleyball. If you need me to do soccer, I can do that. Oh, and also you have a tape-delayed ESPNU 10:30 p.m. college football package that 20,000 to 50,000 people watch, which is nothing for ESPN. It's just a fill-out window. You need an announcer for that? No problem. I've done 4 football games in my life. I will happily take that job. And only then, when that materialized, did they actually have a job for me. They hired me for 45 events. I finished out the baseball season, and by the time a year had passed, I had done 95 events for them that year, and they hired me back for a second year.
You just kind of touched on this, but I want to also add to your repertoire hot dog eating contests. Got that down here. You said you could do everything, and I think there is this motto and this advice I think we always give young people. It's like, say yes, do everything, do everything you can. What did you gain from that, and how important is that to kind of how you got to where you are now, that you just took on all these different things?
I think it's an attitude that a lot of us who are of a certain age kind of came in with, because it was the time of you need to scrap, you need to be versatile, you need to be able to do a lot of things, you need to be an asset. And I don't think that ever goes away in any business or any industry, like to be an asset to an entity of some sort, whether it's a corporation or a network or a channel or a team or whatever, to a paper, to an outlet. Like, you need to be an asset. That never goes away. But the way I knew to be an asset was to be able to do anything, to be as versatile of a player as you need, to be the utility guy if need be, and especially for somebody who's looking for a break. Like, I don't have a leg to stand on in terms of resume or background to be able to say, well, I don't want to do that. I'm above that. I'm not above anything. And I think the mentality of wanting to be challenged, keeping you on your toes, I never got complacent. I just didn't have an opportunity to get complacent because I was always scared that the next job wasn't going to come or the next opportunity wasn't going to come. And I'm in a slow time right now of my schedule, so I'm in my office and I'm putting stuff away and redoing it and all this, and I found my old hard drive. So I was like, oh, well, I have to do the thing that we all do and kind of take 20 minutes to hear some stuff. And I have a voicemail from Mike Tirico, and he had listened to like a bowl game that I had said yes to, and I wasn't scheduled to do this bowl game on ESPN radio, but they asked at the last minute, and I was like, absolutely, I'd love to do that. So on short notice, I prepped it, I called it, and I got a voicemail from Mike Tirico the next day. It said, hey, pal, was listening to your broadcast, was on the drive back home, did a great job. This is my number if you ever need anything, but keep up the great work. Glad your profile's rising a little bit, and best of luck going forward. And that's stuff that, like, he happened to be listening that day, and that shaped maybe not his entire opinion of me, but that certainly made a first impression on him, because years later when he and I became friends and colleagues, he said, I heard you and I knew that I was going to like you because of how you call the game. And that was that's the greatest confidence booster a young person can get, between Ian and Tarico, and getting emails or notes from people that you never know are listening. Mary Wise, the longtime former head coach of the Florida Gator volleyball team, would listen on Wednesday nights to games that Maria Taylor and I were doing on ESPNU, and would say, these two need to be doing your bigger volleyball matches. And that went a long way into making an impression on one of my bosses, who eventually gave me a chance to do the Women's College World Series. And that led to maybe doing the Women's Final Four, and that led to getting NBA, and that led to all of this eventually compounds. And I think just being out there by osmosis, I got better. I'm a reps person. I need to do this job a lot to be good at it. I don't have a natural gift for it. I don't think I do. I think it was honed. So the more I felt results of getting better, the more I wanted to do it, the more I felt challenged by a new sport or a new partner or a new producer or anything. I was like, let's make this good too. And when you feel like you did an okay job, or somebody acknowledges it or recognizes it, that's motivation. And maybe that's external motivation. It's motivation to be better at it and to keep getting better and to keep trying to improve. And I think that mentality of wanting to do it all the time, it only helped shape what I'm able to do now. And I'm very fortunate to be able to do it now still.
We're going to wrap up here in a minute, but as I'm doing my newspapers.com Adam Amin research, and you reach a point where the only time you're in the paper is when you are calling a game. Yeah. So I'm going through some of these, and then obviously when you've got, when you moved over to Fox and when you got the Chicago Bulls job, I'm sure, there were articles then. But I wanted to go early in the career. I've got a February 2015 Rupp Arena. Kentucky is hosting South Carolina. And I just see this. It's Adam Amin, Dick Vitale, Kaylee Hartung. Yep. And again, at this point, are you 30 yet? You're 29.
29, yeah, something like that.
29. You're in Rupp Arena, #1 Kentucky,
yep.
And you're with Dickie V. And Kaylee Hartung, who's also a star.
Yep.
And I'm just I don't know if you remember that game, and again, it just was, as I'm scrolling through newspapers, I'm seeing a lot of Adam Amin, but that was just one that popped. And I'm just thinking to myself, I wonder what it was like for you that day to just kind of look where I am now.
Yeah. It was, I think it was the Valentine's Day game. I remember turning to Dick Vitale in the open while the crowd at Rupp is going nuts and just going, what a great Valentine I have. And it's a dumb TV announcer line or whatever it is, but in my, I remember saying it and thinking, it is actually a pretty good Valentine to have, and Kaylee, who's still a great friend, what a star she is and was then. We all knew it. I think that's what was cool about it. I was working with two people I knew, Dick it obviously was and is a star in the business, a legend, an icon in this business, and Kaylee, I was like, you're gonna do ridiculous things in your career. You're so good at what you do. So I just wanted to do a good job for them, but there were definitely moments that day when I was walking into the arena with Dick, and you just see the aura of this person, what we call aura now. You just feel it, and you sense how people look at him, and you go, this is the type of person I get to work with today. And that is a meaningful thing. I like going back and seeing it or thinking about it or hearing you talk about it, because these are little building blocks to feeling hey, you've not made it. I never want to say you've made it. I think all of us are kind of we never want to feel like we've made it. But there are moments where you go, I think I belong. I think that's the feeling I don't want to lose. I never want to feel like I've made it. I don't care about making it. This is beyond anything I ever imagined or dreamed of at this point already. So it's all gravy at this point. But I do want the moments where, either based on performance or the moment or the place or the event or whatever, I just want to be able to look around once in a while and say, I think this is the type of moment where you feel like you belong in the business and you belong in the chair that you're sitting in, and that was one of those moments. That was one of the first ones.
What's your advice you give to young aspiring broadcasters who are trying to break in?
I think you'll get it out of most experiences what you put into them. I think you can find value in almost any experience, whether it's just something you learn from, which I know this is just this is version 2,500,000 of saying the same thing that people have been saying for years and years and years, but just add me to the list of people that understand this better now. Like, you can find value in anything. You can find value in your mistakes. You can find value in your screw-ups. You can find value in the good broadcast, the good pieces that you write, the good segments that you have, and you can find a lot of value in the bad ones too, or what you deem to be the bad ones. You get out of it what you put into it. If you feel like you squeeze out every drop of knowledge of that moment, hey, I had a good second half broadcast of this NFL game. I'm going to look back at that one and look over and see, what did I do well, and really think about it. Be critical. Still be critical of yourself, but don't beat yourself up over mistakes. Try to take good value out of all of them. That the first half of that broadcast, I wasn't as good. Well, let's learn why. Let's go back and watch that too and say, well, this was bad. This wasn't as good. I've done this better. I know how to do this in a better fashion. And just absorbing the idea of something is the first way of improving on it. So I think you get out of all of this stuff what you put into it. I think that applies across the board. That applies to your relationships. That applies to your friendships, your partners, your spouses, your job. Your interactions with people on a day-to-day basis. You get out of it what you put into it. You put out good stuff, you typically get good stuff back, and you put out a good attitude, you typically get something back that's going to help you out in the future too.
I'm going to end with a DJ question, but I did want to ask one more thing about, let's go back to Spirit Lake for a second.
Yeah.
Obviously, and you talked about how difficult those times were. When you look back now, what is the through line from Spirit Lake, Iowa, Adam Amin, that was technically your first job, to today? If you look back at that now that you're able to look back at it the way that you can, there are things that you learned about yourself or anything, because again, Somerset's easy in a sense because the skills, the traits you were doing there easily apply to now. But are there things from Spirit Lake that you can still take and be like, that was really hard, that was a really difficult moment, but I learned X, Y, and Z that have helped me, that I can still think about today as I'm trying to keep growing in this?
I think understanding that everybody cares is a big thing. It's easy. It was easy early in my ESPN career to feel to take everything seriously because I'm on edge. I'm worried I'm not going to get hired back. There's your own personal insecurities, and all of that is enough to drive you to try to do a really, really good job, right? To be good at this because you want people to notice you or to respect you or whatever. As you get further and further along, the lessons that I take away from that time in Iowa are still important, which is somebody's listening and somebody cares. Somebody's mom or somebody's dad is probably listening or watching your game. And that doesn't mean you always have to temper everything you say, but none of this is personal. I've tried to remember that as somebody who wants to be critical. I think fans respect criticism when it's warranted, but I also know I don't want to be the type of person who's a proxy for, making things personal. Keeping the game at the forefront, the perspective of the game is still the most important thing, and using the understanding that somebody cares when they're watching. Either it's a fan of the team, obviously, or somebody who cares about that particular person. Telling a story or giving some background or giving an anecdote is a big deal to a lot of people. And I'm not saying we got to take our jobs or more seriously than we do, or take ourselves more seriously than we do, but we should take the job itself seriously. And that goes back to hearing Zach's dad call into the radio station and say, "Hey, I heard somebody said this. I swear that's not true. This is what actually took place." And it sounds kind of trivial now, or maybe even then it was annoying and eye-rolling as you're well, we're just trying to do our job. Don't, you worry about you, we're going to worry about us. No, we serve a purpose. We serve a lot of different people and a lot of different purposes for those people. So that's something that I learned then that took me to Somerset as well. Especially for a minor league baseball team, there is a very small but passionate fan base that cares about those people on that field, because that's just something they've latched onto. That never goes away when it comes to sports. It certainly doesn't go away in the higher levels, but that starts at the smallest city in your state and the local the 1A high school that is playing 8-man football. Somebody cares somewhere.
So from Spirit Lake, Iowa to today, look, I think it's very cool that you're the voice of the Chicago Bulls. I think it's very cool that I get to hear you on Sundays in the NFL season. I think it's great that you do preseason football, national or baseball at a national level on Fox, whatever. The DJing, okay? For those who don't know, you've picked back up DJing. It's something you did growing up. It's something you did in high school. You're DJing your homecoming dances. I think it's so cool that the passion that you put into this, that you've, the artistic, we all of us who are in this are looking for things to kind of fill different voids here or there or whatever it is and fill the art. I think it's so cool. And what is it that you love about when you were doing a set, when you're at a bar, you're at a club, and you're spinning? What do you love about it?
When you play a song or you do something, and that's the other part of like DJing that I think gets a little lost to most people, which is fine. It's not their job to know all this stuff, but like the artistic aspect of it, the musical aspect of it, when you do something that people haven't heard before but has a sense of familiarity, whether it's a remix of a song or using the vocals of a song over a track, an instrumental of another one, and people hear something that like their brain gets hit from multiple angles and they go, wait, I know this music, but that's not the lyrics that go along with that. That's different, but that's from a song that I also like, and I know the lyrics to that, so I can sing that song in a different fashion because the instrumental's different, and all these other people are singing around me too. Like you and I were talking about a wedding, our friend's wedding, where you would kind of advise them to say, hey, play Chapel Roan, play Pink Pony Club, because it brings the house down. The house band or the hired band at the wedding played it. The whole dance floor filled up. Everybody knew every lyric. The whole dance floor was ablaze. I've played that song in a remix version and a house music version at a club. It's the same thing. So to see people feel a familiarity for something, but know that it's something that they haven't heard before and it was delivered to them in a fashion that nobody else has done or can do, or in a different way to see it. I get to see that because you're watching people's reactions. Part of DJing is reading the room and kind of seeing what people like and don't like. And when you see people's reactions and you can see that entire process that I just described flood their brain within like 3 seconds, that's a really satisfying feeling when all of a sudden they grab their girlfriend or they grab their partner or whatever and they're like running out to the dance floor and screaming lyrics to a song that they already know. Or if you're playing like an underground house set and you just see people vibing, you see people just moving to something and it's kind of a uniform thing and it's in unison. There's a lot of cool stuff that goes along with that, and that goes back to my days playing violin when I was 8 years old and seeing people be moved by classical music. All of that stuff still plays a role in like how I feel about doing stuff like this today.
Well, if you want to know more, learn more, you can check out Adam on Instagram and see some of the stuff and go see him out there DJing, and then you'll be listening to him on your TVs. And Adam, it's been fun to say I knew you when a little bit. And
know you now.
As you talk about, I like the image popped into my head of a screenshot of you and Joe doing an IHSA volleyball game. Like I can remember him posting it when it was going on. So it's been fun, and I look forward to the first Bears preseason game when you come outside the locker room. Give all of us a big post-game hug when you're on your way. So we're very lucky to have you as the voice of our teams here and nationally. And this is great. It was fun to get to hear how you broke in.
It's funny to think, man. It doesn't feel like that long. Like I'm just getting to that age where I sound like a man who's experienced a certain amount of life. It doesn't feel that long ago where you, me, and Joe were sitting in a booth in Gary, and it feels like a lifetime ago at the same time. And it's just at that point now.